sweet. I'm sorry. Okay. Well, if I can get my hand on it. If I can get my hand on it. There you go. Board of Zoning Appeals, Tuesday, March the 12th, 2018, regular session.
They're out here. Well, I can move the. Because of the wires. Looks like they're pretty well taken care of wires.
Not really. Everybody be careful.
I told her, I wish I could send a guy to lead us. She may not have signed that.
No, she.
I agree to the ethics.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
Shoot. If I could call the March 12th Board of Zoning Appeals meeting to order. Ms. Gibson, do we have a quorum? Okay. Mr. Yulhorn?
Here.
Mr. Harless?
Here.
Ms. Bowden?
Here.
Ms. Cliff?
Here.
Alderman Gibson? Here. First, I've got a couple of announcements, if I could. The Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-judicial body, and as such, the latitude for acting on applications is somewhat limited by state statute and city ordinance. This meeting is being recorded. Therefore, anyone who speaks before the body tonight, including staff, will need to be sworn in. At this time, I will swear in the staff. Staff, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Second, all of our motions are made in the affirmative. As a result of that, it does not necessarily mean that when the person making the motion or seconding the motion will actually vote for the motion when the roll is called. Anyone wishing to speak to us tonight, when you come to the podium, you'll need to be sworn in. We ask that you please state your name and address loudly so it can be entered into the record. Our first order of business will be the election of officers. I'll declare the floor open for the nomination of a chairman.
Nominate Jennifer Sisson.
Second.
Any discussion? So the motion will be for Chairman Sisson to remain. Please call the roll. Okay. Mr. Harless?
Yes.
Ms. Bowden?
Yes.
Mr. Yulhorn?
Yes.
Ms. Cliff?
Yes.
Alderman Gibson? Yes. Our next order of business is to elect a vice chairman.
Vice Mayor, I'd like to nominate Mrs. Raycliffe.
I second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll. Mr. Yulhorn?
I don't know, but I guess I could vote for.
Can I get you to speak into your microphone and make sure your microphone is turned on?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Bowden?
Yes.
Alderman Gibson?
Yes.
Mr. Harless?
Yes.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion that minutes are approved.
Second.
I second.
Third.
We call the roll?
Okay. Mr. Yulhorn?
Yes.
Mr. Harless?
Yes.
Ms. Bowden?
Yes.
Ms. Alderman Gibson?
Yes.
Ms. Clift?
Yes. All right, the first item on our agenda is regarding 6750 Poplar Avenue. Staff have a report?
Yes, thank you. Item number 5 tonight is a application for a parking reduction variance at an existing shopping center that is in the T5 zoning district, originally developed under the pre-existing shopping center zoning regulations. This is at Germantown Village Square. This is located on Poplar Avenue, just east of Germantown Road. This is the current as-built plan. You can see this is the one outparcel building that has Pier 1 in it as the tenant on the south end. You've got McAllister's here and the future BurgerFi restaurant here, and then TJ Maxx at one end and Old Navy, Five Below, 2 new tenants on the east end, and then other tenants in between. You've got parking that is at various points throughout, and then parking behind it. This is the as-built site data. This is information that we've asked them to update, and they came forward with this. They have under all of the approved variances that were shown in the staff report and are also illustrated on the site table that's on the plan. This is just blown up for that. They have 927 total parking spaces. When you look at the 1 to 217 square feet of leasable space that was approved as part of the last variance in 2008, the required number of parking spaces would be 923. The request is for a reduction of 33 spaces, which would take them to a total of 894 spaces. This would leave it at a ratio of 1 to 227. The staff report did state that at the bottom of page 2, just above applicant's justification, that the parking ratio for existing shopping center would then be 1 parking space per 224 square feet. I just want to let the record reflect that that's actually 1 parking space per 227 square feet is the request in front of you. And again, that's for a total of 894 spaces as it relates to the amount of square footage that they currently have on site. Their justification is relative to creating an outparcel on the site. This is the TJ Maxx section on the west end, and the outparcel would be in this area that is currently a parking field. And it's for a proposed drive-through use with 9 spaces that would be in that outparcel development. That would not interfere with any visibility to the existing section, but the displaced parking is not considered critical to the success of the shopping center based on the applicant's application. However, not being able to make up any of the other parking spaces anywhere on the overall parcel and adjacent properties that are occupied, as well as a potential underutilization of parking that exists in the northeastern area of the parking space. That is also part of their justification for the variance request. Staff comments If the variance is approved, the applicant may apply for a revised preliminary and final site plan for the Planning Commission for consideration of the outparcel development under the SMART Code. And should the Board of Zoning Appeals grant the parking variance, condition of approval should be that the property management, property owners work on policies to require employees employees and users of the upstairs office spaces to utilize the parking garage as well as the underutilized surface parking on the northwest section of the property. That is staff's presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Does any member of the board have questions for staff?
Cameron, can you show on the map again where those spaces will be lost, the 33 that they're referring to?
So the 33 spaces would be lost in this area of the current site plan. This is the TJ Maxx here, and this is the area that they are considering for outparcel redevelopment. This is the right in, right out of that west end of their property, and this is at the west border. This is the property borderline, and Bank, Tennessee is right here. Or, excuse me, First Tennessee Bank.
Any other questions? Is there,
I do have one other question. On the drive-through, that drive-through is just, where will that drive end?
That would be determined by site plan approval by the Planning Commission but this is the proposed plan at this point that they presented.
That's the footprint.
That would be the proposed footprint right now. Could be modified depending on how Planning Commission looks at it, but this is what has been prepared. Kimley Horn has provided a memo as part of the application, and Kimley Horn is also putting together the site planning work.
so this is just a first step of many?
Yes, ma'am. So in order for them to make the application to the Planning Commission to be considered under the SMART Code, this parking variance needs to be in place so that they can meet the requirements of both the T5 zoning district as well as the SC1 zoning district. And that full parking calculation of, because it, as we discussed at executive session, it moves from parking lot algebra to parking lot calculus. And so that's a more in-depth parking analysis that would be done as part of their preliminary and final site plan application.
And last question, I know, so prior to application, they have to receive this parking variance before they can submit that application to the Planning Commission. I know that we discussed in the executive session that this is zoned as a T5 urban center designation, but it also has that pre-existing shopping center, SC1, regulation. One of the other board members had asked the question as far as with whether it's calculus versus basic math, if this reduction of 33 spaces meets those SMART Code numbers.
Without doing the calculus, it's
In just a minute.
the applicant is here if you'd like to ask them that very question.
I would love,
Well, can you finish with whatever you were saying, and then we'll move on to that? Is there any?
My back of the napkin in my head review of it, and this is, I hesitate to even call this a professional opinion at this point. These professionals have done a much thorough analysis, but this would meet the SMART Code requirements just based on the intersection of uses on the use table in the SMART Code, but because you would have office, retail, and lower value in terms of parking and load demand on that.
that's fine, Cameron, and I will ask the applicant when it's that time here in just a minute.
Any other questions from the
Well,
board?
my observation is that I think that as it was developed in '69 as a straight SC1, That's what it was. Now we've adopted smart growth, and it is morphing into smart growth that we've envisioned. We've seen a lot of transition over there, and I think that at one time you could probably have safely shot a pistol down the mall and done no damage. So it's a nice problem to have, the way I view it. And, you know, I'm happy to see that it's been revitalized.
Is there anyone present that would like to speak in favor of the ordinance?
Madam Chairman, the applicant may want to make a presentation first.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, will you identify yourself and raise your right
Evan
hand?
Rosenblatt with Peb Enterprises, 7900 Glades Road, Suite 600, Boca Raton, Florida, 33434, and we're the owner of the property.
Okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, just wanted to say before he gets into all the calculus, as Cameron put it, we've been working with the city of Germantown for quite a while since we've become the owners. Everything's been moving along. We brought some great tenants and, working very well with the city. And this was kind of the next step of what, we've had plenty of conversations with Sheila in getting to this approved because, every time we had a new tenant that came in, it always became a question. So we always talked about whether or not the out parcel became an option or not, still getting some sort of baseline so that we didn't have all the back and forth all the time. But, I just wanted to say, thank you all for hearing us and appreciate you being here this evening. And I'll let Doug go.
Okay. And what is your name?
Good evening. Doug Sweat, and I'm with Kimley Horn.
Okay. And will you raise your right hand? And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay.
So one of I guess the question is the smart code requirements from a parking standpoint. Smart code for retail is 3 per 1,000 square feet. So the development has 200,438 square feet currently. So on a 3 per 1,000, that would be roughly about 600 spaces. Then the max is, I think, 5 per 1,000 on retail, and so that would be around 1,000 spaces. So we're right in that range. As Cameron said, the smart code does allow for some adjustments for shared parking because there are office and retail and restaurant, different types of uses. So those numbers would go down if you ran a full shared parking analysis, but just a base, if you just looked at retail, it would be between 600 and 1,000 spaces required by smart code.
What about office? What's the requirement there?
2 per 1,000.
So is it about 2/3, 1/3 office versus retail?
Do you know the breakdown as far as uses?
Yeah, it's about 140 retail, and it's about 140 retail and about 60 office is about what it is right now.
So would that still put you within the guidelines of smart growth?
It would.
Good. Thank you.
I had a question. Mr. Rosenblatt, as far as if this were to be approved conditionally, would you be able to then go through a property management type of conversation with those tenants to make certain that employees are parking in those areas that really move them away from where the customers are coming?
Yeah, so we encourage it now. Unfortunately, we inherited the majority of the leases here, and as we're turning them over, it's something that we put in, to enforce it more. But some of the tenants have been there, predating us, and they don't have it in their leases, so it's a lot harder to ask kindly, which we do. But
so in your new leases, that language is in there?
Yeah, it's something that we have pushed to put in any of the new leases here that employees shouldn't be parking in the front and so forth. And one thing that Cameron didn't mention, but I know it's up there. I mean, we do have the parking garage too. So, whether it's the back, the side, the parking garage, we're encouraging them not to be front and center.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Rosenblatt, first of all, let me commend you for revitalizing the Village Mall. I think it looks great. We've got Old Navy in there now. We've got Five Below that just joined us. And we've got the new Mike Miller restaurant coming in, I believe.
Right, BurgerFi.
Stacks.
So,
Yeah,
and
Stacks
and we've
came in
got
as well.
Stacks, so it's a great revitalization, and so I applaud you. I've also noticed that we've had a lot more activity over there in the way of customers coming to shop, browse, and I think your parking is getting tight. I've gone over there a couple of times. In fact, I came through there just right before I came here, and at 5:20, a lot of the spaces were taken. So I'm expressing some concern as a citizen and as a board member that the last thing you want to do is to have customers not be able to find a place to park. And so I would ask that you guys keep an eye on that.
Yep. Certainly, and I traveled in and out myself, as well as, the data that Kimley Horn put together, which, Doug can give you a little more on the tables themselves, but, certainly we don't want to have an issue with our tenants. We want them to be happy as well.
Well, absolutely.
So we did do certain things, like when we did Five Below, we did activate by putting the staircase down. I did see a couple cars parking over there
Which is
today
great.
to use it. So,
Yeah.
that was part of our plan to try to, make it more convenient for people to use those other parking spaces rather than trying to climb up a hill, which was in traffic and everything as well.
Right, and people just aren't going to park over there and go to Holiday Ham. It ain't going to happen, so,
Yeah.
Anything else? All right, is there anyone who'd like to speak against the variance? No? Oh, is any more discussion?
I did ask the applicant to make sure that the drawing study would be made a part of the record if it had not already been.
Oh, okay, yes. All right. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second?
Second.
Ms. Gibson, will you call the roll?
Mr. Harless?
with the comments that I've made, I vote yes.
Mr. Yulhorn?
Yes.
Ms. Bowden?
Yes.
Alderman Gibson?
Yes.
Chairman Cliff?
Yes. All right, thank you very much. Our next item on the agenda is 19916, 9647 Spring Brook Drive. Does staff have any comments to present?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is for a variance to allow a 6-foot fence in the required front yard. This is on Spring Brook Drive, or Spring Loop Drive, I'm sorry, 9647. So as you can see, this is a corner lot with 2 front yards, and the request is for an encroachment into the front yard to allow for a larger yard area. This is a view from the street side. This is a view within their backyard. And just to touch on some of the particulars, the fence requirements in front yard setback is 30 inches, no higher. Fences over 30 inches are not permitted, and so the request is being made. The minimum front yard setback in this residential district is 40 feet from the property line on all street-facing sides. So this puts them at 32.1 feet, so it's 17.9 feet over the line. So if you've this is 19.7 feet from the line of the house. So under the guidelines, they would be able to bump this out approximately another 1.5 feet and still be in compliance. So that does significantly reduce their side yard in that front yard area. This has gone through notification because the fence was constructed without first obtaining a permit, so they were cited by code compliance starting in late 2017, December of 2017. And over the last year, we have gone through them at various ways to review this. And in December of 2018, they submitted a variance application to the BZA. This is your first meeting of 2019. At this point, that is why it's in front of you after such a long amount of time. Their justification is that the extraordinary and exceptional situation created by the double front yard and the small grassy area that was created by the addition of the pool, and they have added a deck due to some of the drainage issues that were also in that area. So that limited the backyard area for children, grandchildren, pets, et cetera, and potentially, in the applicant's view, diminish the value of the property. The applicant is here if you'd like to ask them any questions. We would also request that they, if the variance is granted, that they come back in and fill, file, and pay for a proper fence permit as well.
Okay. Does any member of the board have a question for staff?
Just in looking, and I couldn't really determine, and that was the house that is due east of this, which would be below it in this picture that we can only see part of it. See where that car is right there that's on the property below? Yeah. All right. Is that the front of that house? Do we know? It looks like it is. Or
This would
maybe
be
not
the-
even the front, just the garage portion.
This, I'm assuming, is the garage area.
Okay. So it may be that while that's the garage, the actual front entrance could have an offset that would put it some closer to the street, which if you draw an imaginary line from where the fence exists now, that house that's due east could conceivably have a fence that would be able to go to where this is.
Give me just a second, and I'll pull that up.
That's my screensaver too. Yeah.
No, I apologize. Apparently this
Well,
computer
my whole
isn't
point,
connected.
though, is that the setback for houses that face Spring Loop Drive to the east could have a setback that is almost equal to where their fence is. And under the right circumstance, would be able to, be out that far.
Anything else?
See, because this is 32 and a half feet. I guess the setback for the house on the west would be 40 feet. So
Yes.
we're talking just a limited number of feet, 7.5 feet. That the house to the below the picture that's to the east of this wouldn't be in violation 7 feet back. So it's a little bit of semantics here, I think.
Setback is
Personally.
40 feet in this
Yeah,
residential
and it's
area.
32 and a half.
Right, and so they're showing 32 and a half for
Right.
where the fence is constructed. And
Right.
the house south of it would still be another 8 feet,
7.5, that's right.
yeah, 7.9 in,
Mm-hmm.
so maybe right along this line.
Right. If you take the same plane there, it's, I think that's one of the hardships of a double frontage lot is that you've got 2 setbacks, and it precludes you from using a lot of your yard. And I think on a case-by-case basis, which is what this is, that's what you consider.
But Frank, wouldn't you be better off amending the ordinance than going case by case?
I have been talking about that recently since we see so many fences. A couple of things, yeah. It should either be, in my opinion, it should either be in the covenants of the subdivision that we as a city government allow, that if you want to, that we grant them the right to say that you can have a fence like we do out in the enclave, out to the property line on the non-front of the house, on the side of the house. Now, that's a situation where they're very small lots and you've got to maximize your yard. My other thing is, we have even had houses come in that their fences are 6 inches too high for whatever reason. It could be topography or whatever. But especially in zero lot lines, I don't think that there's anything wrong with an 8-foot fence, and make that part of the covenants that when one of them comes in as a PUD, that in your declarations and covenants that you can have an 8-foot fence.
But until you have the ordinance changed, don't you have to live with
You're
what we've got?
exactly right. Absolutely. But we've talked about this so many times that we would like for the Planning Commission and the Mayor and Board of Aldermen to do it. I'll be happy to come and speak to the Board of Aldermen if that's who considers it, because depending on what the fence looks like, I think in the enclave, we all have to have the same kind of fence. And that's 6-foot height that's deemed by the city. But when you're 7 feet apart, and you go out on your patio and you're eye level with the top of your fence, if it's a little bit above grade, it doesn't give you really much privacy. Or protect the neighbors from your conversations or your speakers or whatever. So we need to address that, but as you say, we're considering this now, but I think this is a hardship.
Does the proponent want to come forward? Okay, would you please state your name and raise your hand?
Brian Vandergrift.
And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, so help you God?
I do. First of all, thank you guys, and I want to apologize. We built this fence. We moved here a couple years ago, and most recently lived in the country in Louisiana, outside of Baton Rouge, where there was very little code enforcement. We built a house there, and there wasn't many things we had to adhere to. So, first of all, I apologize that we didn't follow the proper steps here in the procedures. I do want to just mention also, as far as a hardship, we bought this house and thought we had enough yard. You can see there right off of the back of the house. It was a grassy area, but for our first 2 years here through the rainy seasons, it just becomes a swamp. So we took the grass out, we put a deck there. It really enhanced the backyard, but then we were left with almost no backyard. Just to the bottom left corner there, you can see a trampoline. That's really all the yard that we have left that's grass. And it really, the other part of the application I put is my wife and I have 9 children. And we also have 5 grandchildren. So it's just, we had no room in the backyard for really that horde of children to run around in. So that's why we chose to build the fence this way, and we just didn't know that wasn't how we did. The other thing I put in my application is if you were to go up that street to the top, which I believe is the north, you'll see that there's 5 or 6, and I put those photos in my application. There's 5 or 6 fences at exactly the same place ours is. And that's kind of why we did it there. We literally just stood up there and kind of eyeballed it, and that was where everybody else's fence were, so that's where we built ours. Ours was right along that concrete line, which is, I guess would have been in adherence to the ordinance, but we didn't really know that's why it was there. We thought they just wanted a smaller yard. So that's why we built it there. So I just wanted those facts to be on record, that we didn't mean to, kind of go and be all wild in how we did this, but those were the reasons we did it. And it has created, you saw the other picture they showed up here, it has created a much nicer backyard environment there. It has been much more enjoyable. And I did put at the end of my application, if you guys can't seem to approve this, I would ask, is there some middle ground we could meet? I sincerely don't want to have to rebuild this fence, but I understand if that's your judgment on this. I would ask then if we could compromise to somewhere in the middle. But I really feel like when you compare the way this looks to the rest of the neighborhood with 5, 6 of the fences up the street being the same exact place, this doesn't take away from the neighborhood or look out of place with anything else that's there. I know those were grandfathered in and built before this ordinance, so I understand that. But again, my just apologies for doing this out of the right order, and appreciate your time tonight to hear me out.
Does anyone on the board have any questions?
Mr. Vandergriff, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
You received notice you were in violation in November of 17.
Okay, I'll take your word. I thought it was December, but don't remember. Okay, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Which was about 15 months ago, thereabouts?
Yes,
and you didn't respond to the letter, did you?
I think we didn't realize we had the first letter. We didn't realize we had the ordinance until, that letter, until somebody had come and knocked on our door, which I believe was, I know the dates in the thing. I don't remember exactly when that was. That was when we started working with Diane on what the process would be for this. You know, I showed up to court a couple times, and then we put in our application for the variance.
Do we know when they knocked on your door?
I don't remember that date exactly. I want to say that was in October. I think that was October.
Okay, so almost 10 months later, thereabouts.
Correct. Diane had come by. I was at work. She spoke to my wife. We literally had no clue. And I'll just tell you, with 9 kids running around, I have a demanding job. My wife works in and outside of the house, and mail can easily get lost at my house. I do apologize.
With 9 children, I understand.
Yeah.
Need you on post on.
They got in with some of the homework pages. I don't know.
Yeah, I understand. Second question, if we do not approve this tonight, you indicated that you'd be willing to make an adjustment to the existing fence. What do you think would be a fair adjustment?
I would say split the difference, maybe. Any foot we can get there in that fence, kind of away from where that pool and that concrete is just going to create us some more breathing room in that backyard. So I guess I would propose, you know, somewhere in the middle, but seriously, any distance that you think would be appropriate would be certainly better than if we just have to put it back where it was. So again, if we have to rebuild it, I understand, and certainly don't want to do that. But if I had to, yes, just any breathing room in that backyard would be appreciated, because again, it is very cramped back there.
Is there a better picture? The one with the pool.
Yeah, there was a. Sir, can you go back to the? So that one, right? That is the picture from inside. So you can see, I mean, we regularly play catch over there and, you know, throw the ball for the dog and stuff like that.
So between the fence that's shown there and the concrete, how much space is that?
I want to say it is, there's a picture with the exact footage. It's 19.7 feet.
And to be in code, you'd have to come back 8 feet. So from 19, so.
You're 30 feet on one from the property line right now, and it's 40 feet is the required.
So you'd have to come back 7.
7 point.
Yeah.
7.5 feet.
7.5 feet, which would be about one foot. Okay.
About half that green space. Be It came back.
Well, I thought it was 19 feet of green space,
Yeah.
and if he has to,
Oh, okay.
come back 7
I was just
feet.
looking at it, and putting it in scale by looking at one of the sections of the fence that I thought was about 8 feet. Anyway,
That's the only question I had.
Any other questions from the board? Is there anyone who wants to speak against the variance? Any more discussion? I have a proposed motion to approve a variance to allow a 6-foot-high fence within the required front yard setback facing Spring Hollow Drive to encroach 8 feet for a length of approximately 55 feet on a corner lot at 9647 Spring Hollow Drive in the R Single Family Residential Zoning District.
second.
That would actually be a first.
That's the first. Now the second.
Oh, what?
Well, this is the proposed motion, just so we have a
Okay.
complete record.
Move to approve. Somebody else can say.
Second.
Okay.
I thought you were making it.
Any more discussion? No. Ms. Gibson, we call the roll.
Mr. Harless?
I'm having difficulty with this because we have an ordinance, okay? And I think we have to, even though we may not agree with the ordinance, we have to live with it. And I'd be more inclined to see a compromise in this area, taking out that one section where you don't have to rebuild the fence, just move the one section back. I'm voting no for that reason.
Mr. Yulhorn?
Yes.
Ms. Bowden?
Yes.
Alderman Gibson?
Yes.
And Chairman Cliff?
Yes, because it has 2 front yards. It's an unusual lot. Okay. Thank
So
you.
we're good?
Yes.
No
you,
one
guys.
sin no more. But you do have to get a permit.
Yes.
Or your contractor, whoever built it, needs to do that.
Okay.
It's not expensive, but you got to come to City Hall to get it.
Diane, yep.
Okay. We'll do.
Follow up with her this week.
Welcome to Germantown.
Next item on the agenda is number 19-917, 2900 Ashmont Drive. Does the staff have some comments?
Yes, agenda item number 7 tonight is a variance to allow 8-foot-high fence in the required rear yard setback at 2900 Ashmont Drive. This is at the tail end of, or north end of Ashmont, right at the Poplar Corner. You can see the triangular shape of this lot. This is the area where there are sections of the fence that facilitate between 6 and 8 feet tall. You've got portions of the fence that are 8 feet on this end, as well as this area facing out towards Poplar. This is a house that's being built on the other side of it at Windstone, thank you. Mr. Yulhorn. This is a view of the fence along the property line. You've got, you can see an 8-foot section here, and then it drops to 6 foot here, and you can see some of the topography changes there as it moves along the property line. Again, 6-foot portion here up to an 8-foot portion here, and then back to the previous pool view. This request is, as shown, for sections of the fence to be permitted up to 8 feet high along the rear property lines. This applicant did apply for a fence permit in 2015, and it was inspected by code compliance in 2015 and found in compliance for the 6 feet that they had applied for. In November of 2018, while inspecting a neighboring property, the officer noticed new sections of the fence that appeared to be 8 feet high. From the adjacent property, the code compliance officer was able to measure a section of the fence and determined it to be 7 foot 10 inches high. We issued a notice of violation requesting that it be brought into compliance at the end of November of 2018. In the application, the applicant stated that the reasons for the variances requested due to the triangular shape of the lot and its proximity to Poplar Avenue, exceptional topography and elevation changes along the lot, which is shown in the staff report, as well as the applicant's submittal. Also includes extraordinary and exceptional situations along the condition of the property, and a section of it has seasonal vegetation that compromises privacy both for neighbors as well as along Poplar Avenue. And all of this results in peculiar and exceptional practical difficulties and undue hardship upon the property owner. The applicant is here to answer any questions as well as their representative. We'd like them to make sure to, if approved, apply to the Neighborhood Services Division for a revised fence permit within 30 days of this approval.
Does any member of the board have any questions for staff? No. Does the proponent want to make a presentation?
I'm Michael Fay, Prime Development Group, 7520 Capitol Drive, Germantown, Tennessee.
Do you swear to tell the truth and the whole truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, this is one of those unusual sites that we have this board for. For the past 2.5 years, my client went in and built a truly unique piece of property, had Archimania create something that we all want to live in when you're in it. In the back, when you saw in the photograph, there was a really unique pool deck. He's enjoyed what's been on Ashmont for years, a tree line. And somewhere in our process, as the development community, we missed something. There were a lot of trees in there, and there were years that everyone wanted to develop over there, and we wanted to save the trees. Well, I can't fault Mr. Johnson, who's building the house next door. But thank goodness Mr. Johnson put a retaining wall in, because what you see, the house beyond over there, is the top plate of the second floor. If he hadn't put a retaining wall in and dug his property in, we'd be seeing the first floor of those houses. And Cameron wasn't brought up because I don't think Sarah was handling this case. Mr. Johnson also wrote a letter of support on this matter that is in the file. My client actually went in and took down a chain link fence and put up this wood fence. If I had the ability to ask you for a 12-foot fence, I would. But we know that we are right on that threshold. That's where we are tonight. The property that you can't see in this photograph, if you look along the fence line, it's difficult to see, but if you look at the bottom of the fence from right to left, it gives you an idea of how much it falls. This piece of property where we have this 140 feet drops about 8 or 9 feet. What the fence company did was they just went in and stair-stepped it in as they saw fit. My client hired a company to put in the fence, and this is what we ended up with. We would ask the board's help on this particular matter primarily because now when my client is in his backyard, he is going to have to go do additional improvements to be able to enjoy his backyard. There's going to have to be more vegetation. We're very lucky that we have Mr. Johnson as a neighbor. We've all known his father, Jack, for years, but Brian, these are good people. Brian has also said he intends on adding additional landscaping in as well for privacy as these two. I would call to your attention a few things. One, Ladies and gentlemen, we are the end, we're the point of the subdivision for Poplar Avenue. There's noise on that road. The fence helps with that. As you can see in the photograph there, on the left, you'll see the 6-foot fence, how dwarfed it looks. But on my way back from a meeting in Collierville today and coming west down Poplar, I can't see this fence from the road. So the only two impacted properties that will be on this is my client and Mr. Johnson, and you have his letter of support. We'd ask the board to allow us to leave it as it was built for that reason, that the hardship is just due to the unusual topography and the relationship of the two properties. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions of the applicant?
You know that picture, Mike, that you have that shows the vegetation? I don't know, is that in front of the fence or on Brian's side?
This vegetation here is on our side.
Okay.
We will have to go add, as my clients say, and I think all of you know Jose, one of all of our favorite restaurateurs of River Oaks, he's going to have to add something bushy to give some separation back in there. But Brian has said he would work with us as well. So what you normally see are two people against each other, or we have two groups who are already working together. So that's a benefit.
And this was where Johnson's property is, the end of Windstone was so undesirable that the rest of the subdivision was developed 15, maybe more years ago.
Right.
And it sat as a stepchild that took a strong economy and need for housing to come and finally put in this subdivision behind the fence. And the drop-off is enormous, and that's why it was not desirable. So it's a hardship as far as I can see because of the topography.
Just a comment, Madam Chair. Mr. Fay, this does meet the criteria for exceptional topographical exception in my mind. And I would just like to say to Chef, thank you for the beautiful structure that you've placed on that property. Having been here for many years, to see that evolution of Ashmont, we are very pleased with it. Is unique. And when we talk about applications that come before us for variance requests and things of that nature, your entire property is, I would say, exceptional and unique in the very best sense of the word.
Is there anyone who'd like to speak against the variance? No?
I have a question. Will the 6-foot fence be replaced with an 8-foot fence to match the other side there, or will it stay exactly how it is?
Our request is just for this fence. You're not asking for more. We're not asking for any more than just the existing fence.
All right, thank you.
Anything else? The proposed motion is to approve a variance to allow a fence up to 8 feet tall along a 140-foot-long portion of the rear yard at 2900 Ashmont Drive in the RE1 Residential Estate Zoning District.
Move to approve.
Give a second.
I second.
Ms. Gibson, will you call the roll?
Mr. Yulhorn?
Yes.
Ms. Bowden?
I vote yes, based on the comments that Alderman Gibson noted regarding the topography.
Mr. Harless?
I'm on the horns of a dilemma here because we have an ordinance that says 6-foot fence is what is allowed in Germantown. You heard Mr. Yulhorn comment about the enclave and their fence issues. And we have this come before us on different occasions where people don't want their neighbors looking into their backyard, looking into their pool, but the ordinance is the ordinance, okay? And for that reason, my inclination is to say no. However, I do recognize that you do have a topography issue here. The landscaping issue is not something that we're concerned about. I mean, you can plant landscaping, you can put in trees and bushes and whatever you need to put in, but the fence itself is a requirement, and I'm voting no.
Alderman Gibson
Yes.
and Chairman Cliff.
I vote yes because of the odd triangular shape of the lot and the substantial drop in the topography. I think you said it was 14 feet at least, so I vote yes.
Thank you very much.
Mike, let me ask you something. Did they get a permit to do this particular fence? Okay.
Sides was done. I think there was a chain link across the back. And then at another point, the chain link was moved and the wood replaced, and there was not a permit for that.
Yeah, just get a permit for it. The other thing we've talked about in the past is that we wanted to start going on record with the people that are not getting permits or the proper permits. The previous applicant, there would have not been a permit granted for that had it been done properly.
This one's surprising.
Yeah. But what we were doing was keeping a list so that if there were repeat offenders, they're coming in here and just ignoring that. I mean, I would have been an offender because I always for years considered that my building permit also included fences. Found out I was wrong.
Is there any old business to discuss? Any new business?
Yes, I would like for us, we say all the time, we're going to talk to Alderman and Planning Commission about restructuring our fence ordinance. It's a different day, and we've got so many unique properties, particularly in zero lot lines being built, that need to accommodate those. So anyway, that's my 2 cents, and probably we're not going to do anything about it, and we'll talk about this again.
Well, Mr. Yulhorn, I would say that is something that I know that Mr. Ross and I have discussed in the past, and I think that it's a new year, even though it's already March, but it's a new year for the Board of Zoning Appeals, and so that is something that we will discuss.
We will do the research and come back with some recommendations.
Thank you.
I think we're put in such an awkward position here to abide by the Board of Zoning Appeals that the ordinance says such and such, and then we have so many people coming, especially on the fence issue, that
No question.
it's difficult.
No
And
question.
you know, and that's true, and I agree with you 100% on that the ordinance is the ordinance. But if there's no ability to accommodate somebody, then it's the Board of No Zoning Appeals. You know?
Well, some of the things that come before us are, there's 3 things that we can approve as variances: the shallowness of the lot, et cetera, et cetera. There's 3 of them. But we've had people come and say, well, I don't want my neighbors looking into my pool. That's not covered, yet we voted yes for things like that. Or somebody that has a 7-foot fence, and then, well, it's only 12 inches higher, and I didn't know that I couldn't build it. So you ought to let me, and somebody says, oh, well, let's don't make them tear down the 12 inches. Well, I don't think we have that luxury. It's either yes or no, and if they violated the ordinance, they violated the ordinance.
Yeah.
There's a variety of mechanisms that have evolved in terms of fences and the looking at minimum administrative variances, de minimis type of variances that can be handled by staff. And so we'll look at the ways other communities that are similar to Germantown manage those types of things and bring those recommendations back to first the BZA to see if that fits what you as a board were requesting, and then we'll start that process through the Planning Commission.
Mr. Ross, what about this double frontage? that one seems to come up a lot too. I don't know if we're right and that's the way it should be, or if we need to make some modifications. You might want to take a look at it.
We'll look and see how other communities are managing double
Great,
frontage.
thank you.
One other item of new business, I intended to bring this up at the executive session, but we were having such a lively discussion that we ran out of time. At our next meeting, depending on when applications are filed, new security protocols will be in place, so we'll have to manage our expectations accordingly and possibly work to adjourn the executive session a few minutes early to come through the detectors ourselves, because staff, commission members, all members of the public will have to go through the security measures moving forward.
And so from your office, Cameron, if you could send that to the Board of Zoning Appeal members to make certain that, especially Chairman Sisson not being here, that we're all aware of that, the closer that we get to it.
We will be preparing a memo for each of the commissions to go out with their packets the next several times until it becomes common practice.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we'll have to leave our guns at home
Yes, sir.
or in the car?
You should be leaving them in the car already based on state laws with police departments.
Okay.
All right, there being no further business, this meeting's adjourned.
Just in the nick of time. I've got a listing appointment at 7:30, but just so Frank won't say anything.